What if I told you that an ancient sea monster from the Bible became the foundation for how we understand government and power today? This is the story of the Leviathan, a creature so terrifying that it would reshape philosophy, politics, and our understanding of civilization itself, the biblical beast. Let's start at the beginning. Deep in the pages of the Old Testament lies a description of something extraordinary, a creature called Leviathan. Imagine an enormous sea dragon, so massive that when it moves, it creates waves that could swallow ships whole. God himself describes this beast in the book of Job, painting a picture of raw, untamable power. Its mouth displays fearsome teeth. Its back is covered in shields so tightly joined that not even air can pass between them. Fire shoots from its mouth, smoke flows from its nostrils, and when it breathes, flashes of light illuminate the darkness. This isn't just any creature. The Leviathan is completely invincible. Swords bounce off it, arrows can't pierce it, spears shatter against its chest, which is as hard as stone. Even the bravest warriors flee in terror at the mere sight of it rising from the depths. But why does this creature appear in the Bible at all? Job's terrible question. To understand that, we need to talk about a man named Job. Job had everything: wealth, health, respect, and a large family. Then, in a test orchestrated by Satan to challenge Job's faith, he lost it all. His children died. His possessions were destroyed. His body was covered in painful sores. In his agony, Job did what any of us might do. He demanded answers. He cried out to God, questioning why this was happening to him. Why would a just God allow such suffering? God's response was unexpected. Instead of offering comforting explanations, God presented Job with a demonstration of incomprehensible power. And at the center of this demonstration stood the Leviathan. In chapter 41 of the book of Job, God asks sarcastically, "Can you pull in the Leviathan with a fishhook? Can you tie down its tongue with a rope?" The answer, of course, is no. God continues, "Nothing on earth is its equal. It is a creature without fear. It looks down on all that are haughty. It is king over all the proud." The deeper meaning here is what's fascinating. The Leviathan isn't just a random monster. Theologians and historians recognize it as part of a much older tradition, the chaos monsters of ancient Near Eastern mythology. Think of figures like Latin from Canaanite myths or Tiamat, the dragon goddess of chaos in Babylonian creation stories. These beings represented primordial disorder, the raw, uncontrollable forces that existed before creation. In these ancient myths, the gods of order had to defeat these chaos monsters to create the structured world we inhabit. By presenting the Leviathan to Job, God is making a profound statement. He's saying, "You, a mere human, can't even comprehend this creature, much less control it. How then do you dare question my designs, which govern the entire universe?" The Leviathan represents chaos contained, a terrifying power that only divine authority can master. It's a reminder of the limits of human understanding and the sovereignty of God over all creation. But here's the question everyone asks: did the Leviathan actually exist? Some have suggested it might be a Nile crocodile, a whale, or even a surviving dinosaur like a plesiosaur. But that misses the point entirely. The Leviathan's importance was never zoological, it was always symbolic. It represents what lies beyond our control, nature's fury, the terror of the unknown, the forces that dwarf our human arrogance. And that's exactly why, 2,000 years later, a philosopher would resurrect this ancient symbol, not to describe nature, but to define something entirely different. Hobbes and the birth of political philosophy. Fast forward to 17th century England. The country is tearing itself apart in a brutal civil war. Brother fights against brother. King Charles I is executed. Society seems to be collapsing into chaos. In Paris, watching this nightmare unfold from exile, philosopher Thomas Hobbes picks up his pen and writes a book that would change political philosophy forever. He calls it Leviathan. Why would Hobbes name his masterwork after a biblical monster? Because to Hobbes, the chaos engulfing England was a return to what he called the state of nature. And the state of nature is a horrifying place. Without government, Without laws, without an authority to impose order, human life becomes what Hobbes called a war of all against all. In this state, there's no industry, no culture, no navigation, no comfort. Only continual fear and the danger of violent death. Human life, in Hobbes's brutal and famous phrase, would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. This is primordial chaos, not in the ocean depths, but within us, in human society itself, the social contract. So how do we escape this hell? Hobbes proposed a radical solution, the social contract. Here's how it works. Rational individuals, recognizing that the state of nature leads only to destruction, agree to give up part of their natural freedom, their right to do whatever they want. Instead, they transfer that right to a central sovereign authority. This sovereign authority is the Leviathan. For Hobbes, the Leviathan is the state, an artificial being created by humans for their own protection. And to function properly, this state must have almost absolute power. It must be as powerful and fearsome as the biblical monster, so that no one dares challenge it and risk returning to the war of all against all. Hobbes calls his Leviathan a mortal god, an entity to whom we owe our peace and defense. It becomes king over all the proud, not literally, but in the sense that its authority overrides the pride and selfish interests of each individual. The iconic image, the original cover of Hobbes's book, has become one of philosophy's most iconic images. It shows a giant wearing a crown, the symbol of sovereignty. But look closer at the giant's body. It's made up of thousands of tiny individual people, all facing toward the head. This symbolizes that the sovereign's power comes from the people who consented to be governed. In one hand, the giant holds a sword, representing civil and military power. In the other hand, a bishop's crozier, representing religious authority. Why both? Because the English Civil War was fueled largely by religious disputes. Hobbes believed that to guarantee lasting peace, the Leviathan needed final authority over the church as well. Religion couldn't be allowed to become a source of division that threatened the state's stability. Here's the brilliant paradox. Hobbes's Leviathan is the complete opposite of the biblical monster. The biblical Leviathan represents untamable chaos. Hobbes's Leviathan represents imposed order. One is nature at its wildest. The other is civilization at its most controlled. Hobbes took the greatest symbol of disorder he could find and transformed it into the greatest symbol of order. It's a masterstroke that forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. To be saved from chaos, must we create our own monster? The Leviathan today. So, is the Leviathan just ancient mythology and outdated philosophy? Or does this giant made of people and power still walk among us? The answer is absolutely yes. Every time we discuss the role of government, we're discussing the Leviathan. Modern governments are our Leviathans. We give them tremendous power, the power to tax us, to make laws, to imprison us, and ultimately to use force. And in exchange, we receive security, infrastructure, healthcare, and education. Hobbes's social contract is alive and well, renewed with every election and every policy debate. But the Leviathan's shadow also looms over our deepest fears about power. When does the state become too powerful? When does the quest for security transform into oppression? Surveillance cameras on every corner, monitoring of our online activities, mass collection of personal data, all justified in the name of safety, to protect us from terrorism, crime, and chaos. But where do we draw the line? The Leviathan was created to protect us from chaos. But who protects us from the Leviathan itself? This is the central tension of modern politics, the eternal struggle between individual freedom and state authority. Cultural legacy. The power of the Leviathan as an archetype extends far beyond philosophy and politics. It's escaped into popular culture, proving its enduring resonance. In video games, it appears as colossal bosses in Final Fantasy and God of War, or as terrifying deep-sea creatures in Subnautica. In film and literature, it inspires gigantic monsters representing nature's fury or existential threats to humanity. Even in contemporary art, like Anish Kapoor's massive installation titled Leviathan, an enormous inflatable structure that swallowed visitors whole, making them feel small and insignificant. Just like Job before the biblical monster. Just like a citizen before the overwhelming power of the state, the Leviathan endures because it embodies two fundamental, opposing truths about human existence. It is the chaos we fear and the order we crave. It is the force of nature that can destroy us and the machine of power we build to save ourselves. When we look at our society, at our governments, at the choices we make as citizens, we might realize something profound. The body of the Leviathan is made of all of us. And the head that commands it, for better or for worse, is the one we ourselves have put in place. The question isn't whether the Leviathan exists. It does, in every government, every law, every exercise of state power. The question is, what kind of Leviathan will we create? One that protects us from chaos while preserving our freedom? Or one that becomes the very monster we sought to escape? That choice ultimately belongs to us,